Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's Alyssa here, and today I'm going to be talking about what you can expect in your first year of computer science. And this is specifically pertaining to the University of Arizona because obviously I'm a student there and I'm not really sure how other universities do this, but I feel like this can still be pretty relatable. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It's been a while since I've also written code in Python. So this was actually a great way for me to refresh my memory on the syntax. The good thing about Python is that its syntax is simple compared to other programming languages. So that's why it's a really great language to start with. I do have another video on an intro to Python, so feel free to check that out. I will link that below. My first year at the University of Arizona, I took Introduction to Computer Programming, and then I took like the next class, so I guess just Computer Programming Part 2. So in order to get into the typical standard schedule for BS in computer science, the math class that you would have to be taking is pre-calc, or you would have had to have tested in pre-calc or above. You need to take Intro to Computer Programming, and my class was called CSC 110, and then the class after that is CSC 120. So let's get started. With Python, again, the syntax is very simple. It's very popular because it's open source. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to talk about and learn is just basic syntax. So I do have an example here for you. So this is basically how you print something. You have your print, and then everything in these quotes will actually print. Anything that starts with hashtags, they're known as comments. So they're basically like notes for you or notes for whoever is kind of trying to figure out your code and looking at it. Usually it's very useful for obviously your graders. So your TAs and your instructors will be looking at your comments to see if you know what kind of code you're writing, and you have to be able to describe your code. So I'm gonna run this really quick. A print statement just basically prints, if you look to the left of the screen, subscribe to Yanzi. I've pre-written this before, so these are just things that I've written. You're gonna learn another thing called variables. It's also very useful. Right here, these are setting variables. And then you're gonna learn basic math. So you have my addition example, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and then I just print the results of all of them. And then there's different ways that you can format this. You can format it differently, which you'll also learn. And styling is gonna be a big thing too. A big chunk of your grade when it comes to these kind of programming assignments is style. So typically, if you look at my variable name, for example, num1, it's considered good style, and it's pretty short and simple, and I feel like even these probably aren't the best. I would probably just do this. I don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to be long, but yeah, it's better than saying number one, I don't know, you just kind of get used to it, and I also have to refresh my memory on styling when it comes to Python, and just because I just want to make sure it's the same. So yeah, styling is going to be another thing you learn. Let's run this basic math example. Oh, okay, you also learn a lot of errors. I should probably mention that. So you're gonna error it a lot, but that's totally okay. These are the best ways to learn. And if you can see in my error, it's kind of good that I messed up. It'll tell you where and what line it's happening. So right here it says line 12. I had just changed it, but down here is where you can see your line. But now let's run this, and we shouldn't get any errors because my print statements are now matching my variable names. So it's able to identify something. And now we have these results. Perfect, so now we're gonna move on to our next example. So the next thing you're gonna learn are if-else statements. So for example, we have a variable set to 10,000, and that's gonna be what we call our salary in this case. So if the salary is less than 20,000, then you're gonna set salary to this salary, so this $10,000 plus another $10,000, so it's basically like giving a bonus. And then if the salary is over $20,000, then you're just going to keep that salary as it is. So now we're gonna print the final salary. In this case, since it's under 20,000, our final result for salary should be 20,000. So let's make sure that this code works correctly. And it does. They're also very useful for taking user inputs, and that is our next example. So now what we're gonna do is, instead of just setting a random number to salary, we're gonna ask the user, hey, what's your annual salary? And the first thing that we need to identify is that it's gonna be an integer. And then this input means that the program is going to wait for someone to type something in. So it's the same code. If the salary is under $20,000, add $1,000. If it's not, then the salary stays as it is. Now I changed the print statement a little bit. So your final salary should be, and then it would depend on what the user types in. So let me run this. Don't know why it's asking me that every time. So my annual salary, so let's say it's 50 grand. So then my salary just stays 50 grand. I don't need that bonus. And that's pretty much the end of my program. Again, it's just a program. It's just a random thing that I made, but no bonus, I guess. Okay, so we learned two different types of loops, a while loop and a for loop. This is an example of a while loop. So in this case, I set a variable to 0 and now num is 0. So then you're gonna have while 0 is less than 10, then you're gonna increment to the num variable. You're gonna increment 1 to the num variable until it hits 9, right? Because it can't be even equal to 10 because it says while num is less than 10. So now it's just going to print num each time, and it's just looping through that. Exactly what it sounds like. So yes, so we get the correct input, 1 through 10. It doesn't have to increment by 1. You know, you can increment by anything. You could set num anything, and you can obviously change this to anything. So yeah, it's a basic while loop. The other loop we learned is a for loop. I'm actually going to keep my while loop in there so you can see the difference. Okay, so now we have our while loop on top. I set some empty print statements so that way you can see some space between both of the numbers and between both the loops. My dogs, sorry. Okay, so now we have a for loop example. This one works a little differently. Now in this one, I'm gonna set my number to 1, and then it'd be for I in range of 10, you're gonna print the number plus I. So let's see what that means. So you can see that these outputs are exactly the same. Between while loops and for loops, it's really by preference in certain situations, depending on what kind of thing you're looking for to do in your code. And I have to say that I haven't used a while loop in a long time, and that's just mostly because I prefer a for loop, and especially in Java, I just have been using for loops more. But yeah, so these basically do the same thing. Those can be kind of complicated too, depending on what they're asking you. Like a lot of times, they're gonna look for, you know, interesting outputs from for loops, and you have to, there's a lot more code than just this, you know. They're not gonna always ask, hey, like, can you print the numbers 1 through 10 in using while loop or whatever. So just be prepared for that. So I would say that these are probably like your basic parts of the coding now. Another thing that we learned, and I'm not gonna talk about because we use something called GUI graphics for when we were doing graphics, and I don't know if that's a pretty common thing to use. YMCA. So they have turtle graphics. Oh, I guess you can do stuff. Yeah, you can do stuff like this. I don't remember graphics. We haven't really done it, and we have definitely not used graphics in my second year. So I'm not going to talk about that too much, but I guess you can kind of maybe expect that. It's pretty fun, so if you want to look into that, you can definitely do that. The next thing that we talked about that I'm also not going to show because it's been a while since I've written it in Python, but you will do a lot of programs where you have to read in a file. Let's say that for a project, they want you to read in a file of songs, and then if your project prompt was to find any song with the word love in it, like out of a huge file of songs, of song names, then you'd be able to identify and find all the songs with the word love in it. I think that when you're in your first year of computer science, it's kind of tough to think about what I'm learning, how is that going to relate to real world programming? And when you read in files and stuff, you're kind of like, wow, it's cool that I'm finding a way to search something through my computer and then do something with that information and with that data. It's a very important skill to have. Reading in files, we also do that a lot. We've done that a lot in my second year of coding for my Java class. So keep that in mind. And then this will also have to be another video because there's so many things that I would like to show. Just other functionalities. Let's kind of think about the example I gave earlier when we're reading in songs from a file. You can use functions like split, and you can split at that comma to split the actual words up. So here I found a comma. You can use a split function to split it, so you'll have all you need is and love. So you can split on commas. You can also do things like set all the words to lowercase, set all the words to capitalize letters. There's just so many things you can do, and those are typically built in. And with the functions, there might be some limitations. Like a lot of times in your first year, you can't use certain functions and you'll actually get points off of that for when they grade or for styling, because usually using certain functions are taking the easy way out, and they just want to make sure that you know how to do things like from scratch and how to do things a certain way. There was actually a project where I got points taken off for using advanced, let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Oh, I think it's right here. Oh, use poor style. Oh yeah, advanced material. So I used this seek function. And I remember I had so much trouble with this part, and then I talked to a TA and they were like, just do it. They were like, I don't know how to do it another way. You can get points off and just know that you'll have some limitations within your first year, usually, I would say. On to the bigger things. We talked about it in my first year, but I feel like we did more things with data structures my second semester of my first year. So, data structures. Okay, I do have an example for this, and after talking about data structures, I'll probably stop this video because, in my opinion, your second semester of your first year definitely gets more complicated. It basically applies, obviously, everything you've learned from the first year and more, and just they come up with more complicated projects for you to do. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. I really want to get into these kind of examples, but just really quick for the last topic, since these are going to be so important, and I have an example right here. So I got this from the internet. Our data structures, they really emphasize that choosing data structures is a big deal. So this will be something that you'll always have to deal with. You have these in Python. You have your data structures, and then you have what are called primitive types, and these are integer, float, string, boolean. So those variables that I was talking about, for example, num2 is going to be type integer because it's an integer. And the boolean you'll set to true or false. We can get more into that. These definitely get more complicated. Yeah, I think we did all of this my first year. I'll dive into this more in depth in another video, and just really wanted to just end here on data structures because you will be learning this, but for the levels of complexity and for really going in depth in it, it's going to be a lot. You know, it's not an easy major, and for a lot of people that I know, you know, we've struggled, and maybe it is easier for some people who are more used to thinking logically and conceptually when it comes to computer programming. It was hard for me because I've never had to think that way before. My mind was always like better at music stuff just kind of clicked to me, and then when it came to this, I was having a lot of issues because, yeah, sometimes you have to they give you the prompt, you have to figure out how to go about it, and it's just tough. Like, if you are planning to major in computer science, you will see, and if you are in computer science, you can see where it can be a little complicated. So alright, you guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck to everyone who's gonna try it. I'm just so excited to talk about these kind of topics with you guys. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.